Welcome back, everybody. Let's continue in our series in Talmud Eser Sefirot. We're in Chelek Aleph, Perek Aleph. We're going to be finishing Perek Aleph today with the final Inyan, Inyan Hey. Ot Samech. The topic today is Lefi she'or Ein Sof hu behashva'a, haya hatzimtzum gam ken behashva'a shehu sod ha'igul. That since the light of Ein Sof was even, it had to be that the contraction is even, which is the secret of the circle. Since or Ein Sof is even, the Tzimtzum was also even. And this is the secret of the Igul, what we call circle. Let's really, read what the Ari wants to say so we can jump into the commentaries to clarify what that means. The Arizal begins. V'hasiba hayta, lefi shekevan she'or ha'Ein Sof shaveh, בהשוואה גמורה, הוכרח גם כן שיצמצם עצמו בהשוואה אחד מכל הצדדים. The reason is that since the light of Ein Sof was even and equal completely, it must have been that also the Ein Sof contracted itself in completely even way on all sides. ולא שיצמצם עצמו מצד א' יותר משאר הצדדים. And not that it contracted itself more in one level, in one side, than on the other sides. ונודע בחוכמת השיעור, and it is known in the wisdom of geometry, שאין תמונה כל כך שווה כמו תמונת העיגול, that there is no shape that is as even as the circle. מה שאין כן בתמונת מרובע, which is not so with regards to the square, Baal Zavit Nitzavat Boletet, which has perpendicular angles, they protrude as 90-degree angles. Uvechen temunat hameshulash v'kiyotze b'shar hatemunot, and similarly with the triangle and with the other types of shapes. V'al ken mukhrach hu lihyot tzimtzum ha'Ein Sof bebechanat igul, and therefore it is necessary that the tzimtzum was in the state of a circle. The Tzimtzum of the Ein Sof has to have been in the image of a circle. Now let's get to the commentary by Rav Ashlag, where he's going to begin to explain what the Arizal means when he says B'temunat meruba. What is a square? He explained that the Tzimtzum happened evenly, so not only the Ein Sof is an igul, but the makom panui that remains after the Tzimtzum is also in the shape of a circle. And he said, specifically, it's not a square. But what's a square? Pirusho im haya sham havchan ma'ala v'mata yamin usmol. This means that if there had been distinguishment between up and down, right and left, if we can discern the difference between what's above and what's below, what's to the right and what's to the left, then the image that would have remained after the Tzimtzum would be a square. Because a square has up, down, left, and right. 4 sides. Exactly 4 sides. Each angle, just as an interesting side point, each angle is a 90-degree angle in a square, and when you add up 90 plus 90 plus 90 plus 90, add up all of the angles, you get 360. 360 is the same angle, really, of a circle. What's the difference between a square and a circle? A circle is completely even. When you look at a circle, there's no distinguishing between up, down, left, and right. It's completely even from all sides, from every angle. You can't discern above and below. That's why we explained last class that when you look at the 4 phases, you should imagine them as a circle within a circle, within a circle, within a circle. The innermost circle is Bechina Dalid. Around that is Bechina Gimel. Around that is Bechina Bet. Around that is Bechina Aleph. Similar to onion. An onion has many layers. The innermost layer is the most potent. That's Bechina Dalid. But the outermost layer, is it considered to be above? Do we say that the outermost layer is above all of the other layers? No. It just surrounds it. Is it below? No. Is it more to the left? No. Is it more to the right? No. You can't distinguish between up, down, left, and right when we're talking about a circle. Because the upper half of the outermost layer is above all of the phases, but the lower half is below all of the phases. So, is it above or below? The answer is yes. Half of the circle is to the left of all of the circles. The right side of this outermost layer is to the right of all of the circles. So is it to the left or to the right? Again, the answer is yes. The point is, you cannot distinguish between up, down, left, and right within the image of a circle. But not so with the square. With a square, we clearly see one of them is the left side. There is a right side. There is a downside and there is an upside. Clear distinguishing between four phases here. שיש שם ד' הצדדים הללו. A square has four sides. שהם הכיונים של ד' הבחינות. Each side designates one of the phases. מכן א', ב', ג', ד'. אומנם לא היה כן. But the image that remains after the tzimtzum was not a square. Let's continue, see what he wants to say. לא היה כן, it was not so, אלא בתמונת העיגול. Rather, it was in the image of a circle. שאין בה ההבחנות הללו. A circle doesn't have these distinctions. A circle doesn't have these designations where it separates them into, distinct up, down, left, right relationships. So that's what a square represents. Is whenever you're able to discern up, down, left, right between the phases. In a circle, which is the circle, the halal panui, the empty space that remains after the tzimtzum is in the image of a circle, you cannot discern these differences. Only inner and outer. Yes, there's such thing as inner and outer, but there is no up, down, left, right. Let's move on to Ot Taf. This will be the final letter, final subject, before we move on to Perek Bet, which I hope to do in this class. What's a meshulash? Not only does the Arizal say it's not in the image of a square, but he also specifies that it's not in the image of a triangle. Now the question becomes, what's a triangle? So we understand what a square is, at least conceptually, according to what Rav Ashlak has said thus far. We're not going to go beyond what Rav Ashlak said because I don't want to become a philosopher. This is going to become a philosophy class. I just want to stick to the text and relay what Rav Ashlak is telling us. Hopefully we can understand it. If not, then I'll be here. I'm available to answer questions in the comments. But what's a triangle? More al madrega sheyesh ba rak gimel bechinot. This is referring to a certain madrega, a certain level, that only has 3 phases. Rak gimel bechinot, meaning aleph, bet, gimel. Shechasra sham bechina dalet. It lacks the 4th phase. Look at Chochma Bina Da'at. Those are phases 1, 2, and 3. Or, you can look at it a different way. Chochma Bina Zeran Pin. So also 3 phases. But any one of these arrangements are incomplete without Malchut. If you don't have Malchut, you don't have a complete Partzuf. 3 phases is not enough. You need 4. Tahainu Gimel Tzadedim Ma'ala Yamin Usmol. In a triangle, we have 3 phases. That means we have up, right, and left. Like a triangle like this. Points upwards. What is it lacking? Chasar sham tzad mata. It's lacking the lower side. The lower point. Lower bechina, which is bechina dalit. Bechina dalit is the lowest phase. Aleph, Bet, Gimel are all higher in purity, in thinness, in relationship to bechina dalit. That's why it says the triangle has up, right, and left. But what does it lack? It lacks mata, down, which is bechina dalit. This is what we call a triangle. So, we're learning geometry, but we're learning it on a mystical level, which is why it sounds so weird, the way we're explaining it. But as long as you got the main picture, which is that a square, yes, it has 4 phases, but it distinguishes between up, down, left, and right. It's not like a circle. A circle has 360 degrees. Just as a square does, when you add up all of the angles, it also has 360 degrees. But what's the difference? In the circle, you cannot discern the differences between the sides. They're all connected in a perfect symmetrical evenness. But in a square, you can distinguish between the 4 phases. You can clearly see one of them is a side on the left side, one of them is on the right side, up and down. But then there's a triangle. Triangle has 3 phases. Aleph, Bet, Gimel. Incomplete because it lacks the 4th phase. Not to mention that it separates and distinguishes between up, down, left, right. But also, more than that, it's lacking the 4th phase. That's what differentiates it from a square. What differentiates a triangle from a square? It only has 3 sides, while a square has 4 sides. Very simple. So I don't want to get so deep into that, but let's now move on to Perek Bet, which is a completely new chapter in Chelek Aleph, volume number 1, or part number 1, I should say, part number 1 of Talmud Eser Sefirot. Mevuar asher me'or Ein Sof Baruch Hu himshich or le'olamot. This chapter we're going to explain that from the light of Ein Sof extends a line of light to the olamot. We've talked about this before. This is the first time we're now officially bringing it up. We're going to be tackling this subject about the line of light, kav. It's called kav, spelled kuf vav. You should remember, kav or. It's a line of light. Kind of like a sun ray, a beam of light. It's a single straight line of light which is drawn to the olamot, to the worlds, that are emanated and created within the place of this halal. After the Tzimtzum, there remains a halal. It's a vacant place. This vacant place is in the shape of a circle. But what's the whole purpose of this vacant space? It's a realm of potential. It's a canvas that Hashem is now going to beam light in the through a pipe, a channel called kav, in order to emanate various worlds. Because this empty space that remains after the Tzimtzum is a realm of potential that the creation will end up being created. Shenitztamtzam. This is the space that was contracted. This is the space that the light of Ein Sof previously fulfilled. This is the space that we called previously, before the Tzimtzum, Malchut of Ein Sof, the Nekudam Sayit, and now it is empty. It is Nitzamtzam. It has been contracted. The light of Ein Sof withdrew from this place, and it is now a realm of potential for creation, something new. Whatever comes down into this void is called new. Chidush. It's called a chidush. Chidush means new. It didn't exist before because there was no lack before, so there couldn't have been any addition. But now that there's a tzimtzum, there's a vacant space, any light that you draw down into this vacant space is a chidush. You're revealing something from the light of Ein Sof within this vacant space. There's nothing new in the Ein Sof. Everything exists in the Ein Sof. But within this contracted space, there's nothing in it. It's just darkness. So any light that comes down into this dark space is considered to be new. Imagine within you, all of a sudden you get an idea, a new idea. Your brain lights up and you feel enlightened for a moment. That's called chidush. What is that feeling? That's a kav. The kav is a chidush. The emergence of this line is the new creation, really. That is the new creation, which never existed before. A line of light represents a narrow focusing of consciousness, a constriction of consciousness, narrowing in on a singular pathway, neural pathway. I like to think of it as a neural pathway because that's, in a way, what we're talking about. A kav, a line, is a certain path, a straight, narrow path. It's not like a, like a circle. Because before the light was contracted from the Nekudam Sayit, the light fulfilled Nekudam Sayit as a wave, a circular way, meaning completely fulfilled. There was no constriction. But now after the Tzimtzum, this kav emerges into the vacant space. Is not like a filling up the whole space. It's not enough to fill up the whole space. It's just a narrow beam of light, very constricted level of consciousness that's now being transferred down into the midst of this void. Because from the Ein Sof, this line extends into the toch of the halal, meaning into the midst of this vacant space. But the head of this kav, it's called Rosh HaKav, touches the Ein Sof, because it extends downward from the Ein Sof. The head of the line, meaning the top of the line, touches the Ein Sof itself, because it comes from the Ein Sof. This line comes from the Ein Sof. However, the end, the Sof of this line, the lowest part of the line, lo siyumo, it does not. The conclusion of this line, the ending point of this line, the lower point, doesn't touch the Ein Sof. The top of the line does touch the Ein Sof to funnel the light, but the end hovers over the void. Derech HaKav mitpashet or Ein Sof leolamot. The light of Ein Sof travels through this line in order to reach the worlds. Kol ha'olamot hem b'makom ha'chalal hahu shenitztamtzama. All of these worlds exist within the void. They really exist within the empty space after the Tzimtzum. This is the same space that was contracted. This space that was contracted is a world that is now being introduced something new. What is it being introduced? A line of light. Kodem hatzimtzum haya hu shmo echad. Before the contraction, him and his name were one. Right? Ve'ein sechel yachol hasigo. There is no mind that has been created that can ever attain that understanding of what really that means. The sechel, it's above the sechel. A mind of a person or of any creation, any angel, is incapable of understanding or attaining the unity that exists before the Tzimtzum. This is a matter that is above the mind. So those were all just some points to bring up now, but we're going to learn them in depth in the coming episodes. I gave you the themes, the bullet points, and we're going to expand on each of these points in the coming episodes. The first thing we're going to focus on is how Min Ein Sof Himshich kav or letoch hachalal. That a line of light spreads from the Ein Sof into the void. A line of light spreads from the Ein Sof into the void. The very concept of this hamshacha, this drawing down of a line. So let's read the first sentence, or first Inyan, I should say, from Perek Bet. And we're going to do the commentary in next week's class. But I want to prepare us just so we can get an idea of what we're going to be talking about next week. Hine achar hatzimtzum hanizkor la'ayl asher az nisha'er makom hachalal ve'avir panui v'reikani be'amtza or ha'in sof mamash. After the tzimtzum, hine kvar haya makom sheyuchlu lihyot sham hanezalim hanivraim v'hayutzrim v'hanaasim. There was already a space where the emanations, creations, formations, and the made things could exist. That's corresponding to the four worlds. The emanated things, the created things, the formed things, the made things. These four things, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, these four worlds are able to exist within this makom, within this empty space. After the Tzimtzum. V'az hamshich min or Ein Sof kav echad yashar. And then, from the Ein Sof, a singular straight line. It's called kav echad yashar. Kav echad yashar. That means one straight line. A single line. It's a straight line. Comes down, min or Ein Sof. Min or ha'igul shelo. From the light of the igul. Milamala lamata. From above to below. Meaning, because the Ein Sof is described as the igul. So, from the Ein Sof, from the igul of the Ein Sof, extends downward a line of light from above to below. It's very important to recognize that this line extends from above to below. V'mishtalshel ve'yored toch hachalal hahu. And it concatenates its way downward. Concatenate means to sequence its way, advances its way down, and it descends into the halal. The line extends from the light of Ein Sof, and it descends into the halal. We're going to learn this sentence from the Arizal more in depth in the coming episode. I'm very excited too, because things are getting more serious, if you couldn't tell. And if you are struggling with any vocabulary terms here, then I truly recommend you to go back into the back into the series, to recap everything that we have talked about from the very beginning of this series up to now. Because things are about to get serious. We finished Perek Aleph. I want to thank everybody who's watching thus far. Your dedication, your determination, your patience, your willpower to keep going forward despite the complications that you may be facing in this study is truly inspiring. Especially as inconvenient as this situation we have, is you have to watch through online. Of course, we would all rather be in person. So the fact that you're watching this is an extremely rare. First of all, I want to just make sure that that's clear. It's very rare. And it's highly praiseworthy. Truly worthy of honor to everybody who's watching this. But to actually implement it into our understanding is where the real complication, the real difficulty is going to be. To put this in your mind and memorize it is not going to do you any good. Chokhmah is not enough. You gotta bina, you gotta bring it down to bina. And eventually, when you unite your chokhmah and your bina, you can actually experience you can actually experience this study within your own self and acquire the da'at, the knowledge that ends up coming to a person who implements it properly. The goal is to attain da'at. There's one thing that this world lacks more than anything else. It's da'at, knowledge. The Arizal says that the exile of Egypt was an exile of da'at, knowledge. Chokhmah is not enough. Bina is not enough. Chokhmah without bina is not a good chokhmah. You gotta match everything you have in your mind with a certain understanding and give birth to a certain knowledge. And that is the complete system. Chokhmah bina da'at. Then you have clarity and connection to Hashem. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.